Forrest here with the Forrest Outdoor Adventure YouTube page. Guys, I've worked in a bike shop for years and I see so many repairs come through our door. The crazy part is, with just a 5-minute check, so many of these repairs could be totally preventable. So in this video, I'm going to show you the most expensive mistakes I've seen people make with their bikes. I'm going to explain why they happen, and by the end of this video, you're going to learn how to avoid it. So let's get into it. So to start this video off, behind me right here, I've got one of our rental bikes for the bike shop. So there's lots of things with bikes that happen with excessive mileage, and these rental bikes see some of the hardest, farthest miles almost daily. So I'm going to use this rental bike as a good example. And I've got a couple other really cool bikes here in the bike shop that have similar problems and other issues that are on my list. So stick around to see those. So the very first thing on our list today is something super simple, and it helps with so much preventative maintenance, and that's just going to be oiling the chain. You want a light film of oil on your chain. So one of the biggest component killers on bikes is riding with a chain that's too dry, meaning you want a little bit of oil on the chain. You don't want too much oil, but you want a little bit so the components can function properly. And let me show you what I mean. So as we touch this chain here, I can feel it's got a little bit of an oil film all the way along it, and I would actually call that good, because if it comes in contact with any water, it's not going to surface rust, because these chains are bare metal after they've been spinning through your cassette of gears here on the back over and over and over. Chain lube does a lot more than you would think. Chain lube actually extends the life of your chain. There is special chain lubes they sell that can really extend the life of your chain. So keeping the chain oiled properly and making sure all these components run smooth together is going to drastically improve the lifespan of all of your drivetrain components. And that sort of leads me to my next thing, and that is waiting too long to replace the chain. So how do we know when to replace it? So this right here is one of my favorite tools here in the bike shop. So this right here is the Park Tool Chain Checker. So instead of just guessing how much lifespan your chain has left, get yourself one of these Park Tool chain checkers, and it doesn't become a guessing game anymore. You're gonna save thousands of dollars on your drivetrain, because what happens over time as you ride lots of miles, these chains stretch. The distance between the links gets longer and longer. And what can happen over time is, as these links begin to stretch, they start to wave out your cassette teeth. These teeth become less of a square edge and they become more of a wave shape. That will eventually turn into drivetrain skipping, where the chain jumps teeth on the cassette, which in that case means you're gonna have to replace this entire cassette. And in some cases on really high-end bikes, those cassettes can be hundreds of dollars. I've seen them upwards of $500-600 for the really nice ones. Now, a good way to avoid that, break out the chain checker tool. As you can see, this chain checker tool's got numbers. They're numbered 25, 50, 75%, and so on. You're gonna put the front of the chain checker tool in one of the small links, drop the back in the back, and you're gonna rotate that chain checker tool forward. And what that's going to do is it's going to check the distance between the links on the chain. Now in this particular case, we're about 65% worn. I usually like to let my chains go to about 75% before I replace them. And theoretically, as long as you keep replacing the chains when they're meant to be replaced before they get too worn, you save the entire drivetrain of the bike. So what happens if the chain gets too worn? Well, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to break, and then you know that it's way overworn and it's become weak at that point, or the other option is it wears out your entire drivetrain. Now, what exactly do I mean when I say drivetrain? When we say drivetrain on a bike, we're talking about the cranks and the front chain rings right here. In this case, we have 3 gears here, so there's 3 chain rings to wear out. And we're also talking about the rear cassette, as well as the chain. The chain is part of that drivetrain. So these rear cassette teeth can wear out depending on which ones you use the most. Now, oftentimes you'll find a really worn drivetrain is going to start to skip teeth under load. And in my experience, this usually happens with the bigger rings in the back, because those bigger rings are the easier gears to pedal in. A lot of people put a lot of torque into those gears when they climb hills. So on a bike like this with gears in the front and back, you're probably going to see the most wear on the big rings in the back and the small rings in the front, because that's going to be your most common combination for climbing hills. And not to get too repetitive here, but the next thing I want to talk about is funny noises. So the funny noise topic on a bike is a little tricky because it could mean a lot of things. So the first thing that comes to mind with funny noises is the shifting and the indexing of the shifting. Guys, if you can hear while I'm pedaling this bike, listen to the noise. Now what you're hearing right there is actually that derailleur hunting for gears left to right, because the derailleur on most bikes is operated off of a cable. Now that cable here operates off of cable tension, and what this little guy on the derailleur is for is what they call a barrel adjuster, and the barrel adjusters are typically found on the top of the derailleur as well as up here on the shifter. And now obviously if you were to ride continuously with that noise, what's going to happen is that chain wears into each side of the cassette wrong and it just blows through your components, especially on electric bikes, which is a whole nother topic. But the adjustments are the same all throughout. So what we're getting is improper indexing of the shifting. How do we fix that? We fix it with the barrel adjuster most commonly. Now if we can look down the back of this derailleur, we can see it's offset a little bit too far to the left. So what we're going to do to fix that is we're going to loosen our cable tension a little bit, and that's going to suck that derailleur out towards the end of the bike. So what we're going to do while we're pedaling the drivetrain ever so slightly, not to wear anything out even more, is turn this barrel adjuster about a quarter of a turn at a time. You should hear that noise disappear as we go. So let's give it a shot. So I'm going to put you guys here on my handy dandy Park Tool stomach mount. Let's see if we can get this noise to go away. Turning the barrel adjuster counterclockwise in turn loosens the cable tension. And as you can see, the noise is completely gone. And we see so many bikes come in for shifting adjustments that just got set up out of the box and maybe the cable tension is just a little bit wrong. And sometimes that's all it takes. Yes, sometimes you have to get a little bit more advanced and mess with the B tension and the limit screws, but there's a whole nother time and place for that. And I've got plenty of other videos that explain more in depth of how to do the in-depth adjustments. This is just for bikes that you want to keep on the road. And on this bike, it's got a front derailleur, and if it does the same thing, oftentimes what happens is they just don't shift at all, and that's going to be primarily a cable tension thing. And guys, if it's not going up to the big chain ring, which is the most common, that's going to mean you want to tighten the derailleur cable tension counterclockwise. That barrel adjuster right there, counterclockwise, it's going to tighten that derailleur cable, and eventually it should shift up if the limit screws and everything allow it. I realize there's a few terms here that might get a little confusing. Basically what limit screws do is they limit the distance that the derailleur can travel. Now both the front derailleurs on these and the rear derailleurs both have limit screws. In this case, on this derailleur, you can see it says H and L. And H and L stand for high and low limit. Now your high gears are going to be your hardest gears. That's going to be the small ring here in the back. If you turn that H screw in, it's eventually going to get to the point where it won't shift into that small ring. You would want to then back that screw out to the left just a tiny bit, and it should allow the chain eventually to make it to that smaller ring. The same goes with the L limit. The L limit is your low limit screw. That's going to be the bigger chain ring in the back. Eventually, if you tighten that low limit too tight, it's not going to make it to that big ring. You would then loosen it a little bit. Chain should jump up there. Another way that you can check the adjustment and make sure it's proper is by actuating the derailleur by hand. Let me show you how to do that. So as you can see, as we turn the gears here, you're not getting any funny clicking. What we can do is grab the derailleur like this. In order to check that low limit screw, we can grab the derailleur like this while it's in the small ring, and we can push it all the way up to that big ring, and if we let go, it should just fall right back down to that small ring. And as long as you're able to get that full range of motion like that on any bike, the chain should never shift off. You should never have any problems with dropping the chain. As long as you get the cable tension correct after that, you should never have any issues. So on the topic of funny noises, I've got two more things for you. That's gonna be funny pinging noises as well as squeaks and groans. Now, let's start with the squeaks and groans. Where exactly would that come from and why would it happen? So the first thing a squeak and groan could come from would be from the headset or the headset bearings. Most commonly it's because they are starved of grease and it's from improper washing. Can't tell you how many headsets I pulled apart that are totally dry of grease, and it was because the person was just pressure washing mud over and over off the bike, and it just roaches the bearings that are inside of here. Whether they're ball bearings or sealed, it'll roach them every time. So if you wash your bike, you want to make sure you just use a hose and light soap, or even better, a microfiber rag with some cleaning spray. Takes a little bit longer, but really saves the life of your components. The other most common area for noises is going to come from the bottom bracket that's in here. It's the bearing that connects these two crank arms together that these spin on like that. Now, if the bottom bracket is creaking, it could be worth it to take it into a shop because that's a little bit more of an advanced repair. More often than not, if it's a sealed bearing bottom bracket, you can try to repack it with grease. But if it's not sealed and it's a cheaper square taper bottom bracket, like a lot of bikes are, it's worth it just to throw the money at it and replace it. The next thing I want to talk about is these little guys right here, as well as these rods that they're connected to. What are those? So what those rods are actually spokes, and they're operated off of what's called spoke tension and spoke lash. Now those are two terms we don't really need to get into today because it gets a little technical, but more often than not, especially on electric bikes and mountain bikes, you end up breaking what's called the spokes. Now the spokes are these guys, and what usually breaks is going to be the spoke nipple, they call it, kind of funny name. It's the piece that connects the spoke to the wheel. Now, this is a little bit more of an advanced repair, but the preventative measure for this would be every once in a while after a long ride or a rough mountain bike ride, again, especially on your e-bikes. So super duper simple. My preventative check for this to make sure you have no broken spokes is to go around and just pinch each spoke like this. As long as they move just a little bit, you should be good to go as long as nothing's broken. If you find any loose ones, you want to make sure you take that in and get it replaced, or I've got a video on how to fix that as well. You can totally learn how to fix that on your own, but getting it replaced as soon as possible is the right thing to do. So what happens if you wait too long to get a spoke replaced? Well, what eventually happens is it throws the whole tension of the wheel off. Because what the spokes do is they draw this wheel left and they draw this wheel right. The spokes that come off the right hand side of the wheel, if you tighten those spokes, they suck the wheel that way. Tighten those spokes, they suck the wheel this way. So you don't want to wait too long, because if you break one, you might be able to get away with it for a ride or two, but eventually that wheel is going to really start to walk. You could start wearing out tires. And speaking of wearing out tires and things rubbing, if your spoke tension is off and you have rim brakes like this that grab on the wheel, these brakes can rub. Now there's also a very simple way to adjust rim brakes like this, and all you need is typically two different tools. That's going to be a 5mm Allen wrench and a Phillips head screwdriver that has a small little head on it for these screws on the side. So what we look for with these rim brakes is for them to be centered, and you want a little gap on each side of the rim. If that rim's got any walk to it, you're going to hear a rub. Eventually you ride long enough, if that rub is walking more on one side or the other, it's going to wear out your brake pads uneven, which isn't super critical, but it can cause some annoying noises, especially if those pads heat up and keep going around and around. You're going to get a whine or a hum, or it'll just make it hard to pedal. So if we grab our screwdriver right here, now in my case this brake pad is perfectly centered, but let's say we wanted it more to the right. Kind of operates the same as the derailleur and the limit screws. These little screws right here operate the tension. If you turn that screw to the left, what's going to happen is it's going to suck that brake caliper to the left, because you're adding less spring tension to the spring that's underneath here that mounts it to the frame. If you turn this screw to the right, you're adding more spring tension, and that's going to in turn pull the brake caliper to the right hand side of the bike. Now you have springs on both sides, here and there. So what I like to do is start at a decent point and match each spring with its own spring tension on each side, make them nice and even. Make sure the brake pads aren't too worn out. You have a little wear mark right here on the back you can check. That's a telltale sign. Then we center them up. I just do that visually. I look for a small crack here and a small crack right there. And what we want to do is make sure that those cracks are exactly the same on each side. Sometimes you can turn that screw, and if you don't see any movement, you can kind of grab the brake like that. You'll see that brake caliper really start to wake up. The other thing you can do if you're not feeling enough out of this, if this brake lever is going all the way to the handlebar, that means you have too much slack in your brake cable. You can in turn loosen this pinch bolt, pull this cable right here a little bit tighter, and tighten this pinch bolt down. Now it doesn't take much on those pinch bolts, just a little bit. If you're really close or it's just rubbing a little bit, you even have a barrel adjuster on the brake, typically, if it's cable actuated. And those barrel adjusters are usually found right here on the front of the brake lever, and they work the exact same as the ones for the shifting. Tightening the cable is going to be counterclockwise rotation, and loosening is going to be clockwise rotation. And make sure to lock down the lock nut when you're all done. So this next thing I want to show you is actually a super common thing, especially with electric bikes. Let me show you what it is. That's going to be the tire rolling off of the wheel. Now, why does this happen? Well, tires roll off the wheel for two reasons. Either you aired the inner tube up too much and then it sat out in the heat, which here in the summer in California, it's 110 outside. And what happens is the inner tubes expand and these tires aren't strong enough to hold that extreme pressure, and the tire and tube will actually blow off the wheel. The other thing that can happen is it's not aired up enough. Now, I think in this guy's case, it wasn't aired up enough. As you can see, that inner tube's all stuck here in the brake, hanging off the side, so he'll need a new inner tube regardless. That's the only fix for this because it's way too chewed up and gone. If this happens to you, you want to make sure you inspect the sidewall of the tire as well. Make sure it doesn't happen again. This is just another prime example of why running the proper tire pressure is critical in your tires. If you run the proper tire pressure and you store the bike indoors when it's sitting for a long amount of time, the pressure in here never has a chance to expand too much and blow the tire off the rim. And you'll know while you're riding that the tire's not going to roll off the bead when you take a tight corner. It's almost the same as a car. If you're too aired down off-road, that tire will roll off the rim if you pinch it between a rock. And that kind of brings me to another point. If you don't have enough air in your tire and you're mountain biking, really only on tires with an inner tube, this doesn't apply to tubeless tires, you can run into what's called a pinch flat. Now, pinch flat can happen in a number of scenarios, but typically it happens because the tires aren't aired up enough and they get pinched between a rock and that tube gets what's called a snake bite. If I haven't mentioned already, changing a rear hub motor e-bike flat is one of the most common and the most expensive things you'll run into in a bike shop because it's one of the heaviest things to do. Some of the e-bike tires don't even have removable wires, so you have to hold the tire up while it's on the stand to replace the tube. Another basic thing to grab is one of these guys right here. This could save you a ton of money. If you guys just want to know your tire pressure right away or be able to air tires up super quick, just keep one of these bad boys in your car. They're like 50 bucks. It's got a pressure gauge on it. It's got a nice air chuck. It'll do all the valve stems through the one hole right here. There's no adapting anything funky like that. Go ahead and pick up a basic floor pump. It could save you so much money. I don't really ever charge for this, but there's a lot of people who come into the bike shop who just need basic air and they think that their tubes are flat, and I'll take the tube out of the wheel. We'll check for any leaks. Hey, there's no leaks. It might just be an older tube. You could air that up at your house with one of these floor pumps and just call it good. Save you the trip. And by all means, you don't need like a high-end floor pump. You can go to Walmart and get the basic cheap one. Just make sure it does the valve stems that you have on your wheels. And before this video gets too long, I want to talk about the last thing, and that's never checking for loose bolts. So many times here in the bike shop, people come through the door with a headset stem right here that's tweaked one way or the other, or a wheel that's about ready to just completely fall off, or another real common one is the crank arm bolts right here get super loose and it throws the whole shifting off. Or a good thing to do, get yourself a basic set of Allen wrenches, and if you're not sure what those are, let me show you. Pick yourself up one of these multi-tools right here. This has got everything from a 2.5 millimeter Allen key all the way up to an 8. For example, on a bike like this, if it had lock-on style grips, those are going to be a 3. Everything from your brakes to your stem is going to be a 4 millimeter, and your brakes down here are going to be a 5. And then most pedals, if they're an Allen locking pedal, are going to be an 8 millimeter Allen key. Some pedals can be super hard to get off, so having a really long Allen key for pedals is a good idea if that's what you have. The other option to get pedals off is a 15 millimeter box end wrench. I couldn't recommend getting one of those enough, or even a pedal specific wrench. Now here at the bike shop, we bust off so many pedals that I have this big long Park Tool wrench. It's like 20 inches long, but you're able to get off any pedal. And the end of that is a 15 millimeter box end, which will do 99% of pedals as well. I want to talk about one more super simple thing I feel like a lot of people ignore: water bottle cage bolts. And guys, this is so critical. I don't know how many times I could reiterate these. It's these little tiny bolts right here on these frames. Not as critical to check these on an aluminum frame, but guys, I've seen so many times on a carbon fiber frame where people forget to tighten those, and what happens is on a carbon fiber frame, there's a little riv nut they put in there, a little fitting that's got threads on it. And what'll happen if those get too loose is they'll rattle, especially on a mountain bike. And when they rattle enough, the little fitting rattles loose and can actually fall in or fall out of the frame. If you end up in that scenario, it's a real nightmare in order to get those threads repressed back into the frame. And on some carbon fiber frames, you're unable to do that. So number one rule I would always check if you're getting a weird rattling, start at the water bottle cages. Make sure they're nice and tight. You can see this one flexes a little bit, but these bolts I like to keep super tight. Prevents so many noises. So let's do a little recap on everything we learned. So number one, know how to adjust basic shifting. It's super easy. I've got a bunch of videos on it, and I'm not the only one on YouTube. There's a ton of videos on how to adjust shifting. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be able to take care of like 90% of the noises and weird little gremlins that go on with your bike. The next thing is going to be know how to adjust your brakes. So if you're out there in the field with mechanical brakes, you're able to keep them adjusted and you're able to keep riding without having to make constant stops. It's going to save you a bunch of money in the long run, not having to continuously get your brakes adjusted, especially for you e-bike guys. The heavy e-bikes, they wear brakes so fast. You got to know how to adjust them. The next thing is making sure that your tire pressure is correct all the time. Pick yourself up a basic floor pump. You can check your tire pressure. If I was riding every day, I would be checking it at least every morning before I left, just to verify that I got the right pressure I want in there so I'm safe and that tire is not going to roll off the wheel. And guys, another critical thing, so critical, is the fact that you don't want to wash your bike with a pressure washer because it can ruin all the bearings in your frame. Especially you high-end frame guys that have pressed in bearings, carbon fiber frames, don't even get near the pressure washer. Hit the whole thing with BioWash, heck, even Simple Green, something that's not high pressure, microfiber rag, the whole deal. If you want to clean the chain, designate a rag to that, hit it all down with degreaser and wipe the chain down. Don't even worry about it. Don't pressure wash your bike, hose at the most. And with all the other basic gremlins you've learned how to tackle in this video, you are going to be the bike riding adjustment master. You're now a machine. You know how to keep that bike adjusted. You know how to stay on the road for thousands of miles to come. And guys, while I have you, we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. So if you have not clicked that subscribe button, please join the amazing community here we have. We do adventure videos weekly. I'm out four-wheeling, camping, mountain biking. We're here in the bike shop, technical tips and tricks, all of it. It's a great time. Check out the playlist I have linked in that video description. This has been Forrest. I'll talk to you guys next week.